Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Fintech Ki Baat Dil Se. Today we have with us Miss Hardika Shah, founder and CEO of Kinara Capital. Hey Hardika, thank you so much for joining us.
Shreyash, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. So Hardika has had an illustrious career in the industry, and she, I think, almost 11 years back, founded Kinara Capital, if I'm not wrong, right?
That is right.
Kinara Capital caters to the MSME segment and the micro entrepreneurs, and it's all about building a strong foundation for India's economic development. So, over to you, Hardika. Would want to understand a brief of your background. Where did you come from, and why did you kind of decide to start off on your own?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think my journey into starting Kinara is a little sideways, so to say, right? So let me just start at the very
Okay.
top. I grew up in Mumbai,
Mm-hmm.
very middle class Gujarati family.
Mm-hmm.
One side all entrepreneurial, one side all professionals, professors, doctors, scientists, and
Okay. Wow.
chartered accountants and whatnot. And I ended up going to the US to do my undergrad. Was working in consulting, management consulting, in a
Mm-hmm.
core firm for many years globally. That was a very
Mm-hmm.
exciting journey. You get to travel the world, you get to solve tough problems for Fortune 500 companies, and you get to learn a lot in the process. I
Right.
had the opportunity to come to India in one of my assignments, and it was a time
Mm-hmm.
when India had just, it's been a decade since liberalization had happened. There was
Mm-hmm.
an expectation that a lot would have changed, and a lot was changing, but this gap, this big divide that is amongst us remained, very strongly visible. And it
Indeed.
reminded me of my childhood. My mom was a small business entrepreneur, and she was always hustling to keep her business alive and get capital. And I saw
Mm-hmm.
family members doing the same, and I was hopeful that perhaps after all these years that would have turned, and it hadn't. So I started thinking about that problem quite deeply, and over time thought that I wanted to address it because it is a very large market. As you were mentioning, the micro
Mm-hmm.
enterprises that we serve them within the MSME universe, they're
Right.
95%, 95% of MSMEs are micro enterprises, and they are the ones that are most on the fringe of financial inclusion, with access to capital being the biggest challenge. And
True.
within that, unsecured business lending was just something that we have struggled to solve for, and
Mm-hmm.
and so that was the problem that sounded that something needed to be done, and is really what brought me back to India and to start Kinara Capital.
Wow, that sounds really interesting, right? So, as in something that I've observed, across multiple entrepreneurs that I've seen, the the business that they start somewhat resonates with either something from their childhood or something they have seen, right? Like you said that kind of saw your mom, building that business and kind of hustling around, and that kind of inspired you to address that problem specifically. So, let's come to the specific problem statement that you were solving, funding for MSME loan, and this is, I think, this was back in 2011 is when you started, right? Right after the global meltdown that we had, the global economic meltdown.
And
Yeah.
the
So
crisis in the microfinance side in India as well. So the back-to-back, impacts there. Yes.
definitely. So I mean, that was if I were to kind of be bold enough to say, it was picking up the that specific economy from shambles, and taking a risk on starting to fund those businesses and everyone, right, where everyone was kind of very uh, I would say very cautious to get into this businesses again, right, especially if you're starting anew. So what essentially is something that when you started this specific business on micro entrepreneurship funding, what are something specific that really inspired you to start off during that time?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just said it, right? It is a big problem. And as we were
Hmm.
coming out of the global financial crisis, and that was one way. And the Andhra crisis with microfinance, there was an assumption or an expectation that microfinance would make an impact to the larger economy. But there is this missing middle gap, the MSME gap, which microfinance wasn't able to address for a variety of reasons, model being different, very big orientation, the ticket sizes, the amount you would give a smaller, regulatory framework, right? But whatever the reasons, there was this gap that was left. And if you think about it, if that area has the biggest potential to make the biggest impact on our economy, and yet we just struggle to figure out what to do, how to do, or even if we should do, right? So it requires perhaps someone with fresh a fresh look, a new approach, and just some amount of courage and bravado to come in and start something. And say, let's give it a try, because somebody has to take the first step.
No, definitely, and considering that specific scenario, what went through your mind when you kind of left the job and you were like, this is what I want to do, like there is something I want to do on my own, and abhi hi karna hai, this is the time that I want to kind of jump into it.
I think obviously a lot of questions, and perhaps a lot of even lack of clarity of how, right? And I think fundamentally what went through my mind was, if not now, then when? And if I give it a go and it works, then we have achieved something. And if not, I've at least attempted something. And that is it, right? In life, or that's if we don't do either of those two, then we're just waiting for things to happen to us. And I didn't want to be one of those people who didn't want to try. And for that, I was willing to risk. I was willing to risk a great job and a global consulting company, pack my entire life in a 40-foot container, move to Bangalore, a city I never lived in, no regrets, and start, right? And the start was, how do we solve this problem of lack of documentation, lack of formalization, of understanding the micro business, so that we can give that unsecured business loan to the MSME that needs it. And then you realize that, you need to be an NBFC, and there are all these regulatory and compliance requirements. Okay, fine, we'll go tackle that one step at a time. That just seems like a requirement and not the reason why we are doing this, right? And so that's how we got started.
That sounds like a lot of courage and a lot of passion mixed into one into a single thought, of getting into that. When you talk about packing everything and moving into a completely new city and starting something of your own, taking a step back, starting something of your own is anyways something that a lot of people kind of are thinking about and are on the edge, right? They are on the edge of taking a leap of faith, but are kind of stuck, and adding moving to a new city and doing that kind of adds another dimension of variable over there. So how do you look at, or what would be your advice to like youngsters or people who are kind of on the brink of jumping into entrepreneurship but are kind of stuck because of a lot of dilemmas?
Yeah, I think it is really a question of prioritization and some level of practicality, right? We do need to be practical about our own lifestyle, our expenses, and our ability to support. If you have families that you need to support, then what that requires. And by taking this risk, will you be able to balance or manage that alongside a journey that is undetermined and arduous at times, and certainly unpredictable for the most part. Sure. So in that sense, the prioritization I would look at is one financial, one personal. Who do you have in your network, whether it's friends or family? Who will you lean on? Because there are days when you will need to go home and just unload to somebody and have
Agreed.
that support structure, that emotional support structure available to you to be able to do
Hmm.
that business support structure that you can bounce ideas and break down problems and solve for, and so, and making sure on the financial side that you are clear on what the journey might look like, because if you have responsibilities, that you're able to balance that.
No, definitely. And I think you kind of answered my next question as well. My next question was going to be, what was the safety net that you had, and how do you advise, other entrepreneurs to kind of build a safety net before you kind of jump into entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I had worked, for almost a couple of decades in corporate world internationally, and
Hmm.
built somewhat of a financial safety net that I could rely on. Most people try to, save up for their retirement. I use that as a way to
True.
say, if not now, when, right? And so that was helpful for sure. And then family. My family was the biggest support structure. To the credit of my husband, he actually sold his business so he could move to India to support my vision,
Wow.
my plan, my journey. So a lot of family support did come together. My business
Hmm.
friends were my seed funders. So people who have seen me up close and personal through business school were the first ones to write a check and say, "Yeah, if
Wow.
you got to do it, we totally are behind you. And here you go. Here's some money, and call us if you need anything." Right? And I've called them
Awesome.
when I wanted to bounce ideas in it. So building that and having that really did make what you call, a courageous step a little more courageous, or a little more easier to take that step.
Hmm. No, definitely. I agree with you. Multiple things need to be, taken into consideration, as you rightly said. When you talk about financial thing is one, you need to have that emotional support, and most important of all, like you said, your husband came down here, sold his business off, and moved back to India. That's probably that kind of support, family, and is something that probably an entrepreneur needs. Otherwise, if there is a disconnect between what they are doing versus what the family is expecting and all of that, it becomes another battle to fight, right? Another battle to fight.
Exactly. It becomes you have no safe space then.
True. That is really important. Great. I think let's kind of switch gears a bit and dive a bit more into the business side of things. Uh, when in 2011, right, when you started lending, specifically to this specific segment, the micro SMEs, which is still notorious for lack of underwritable data, if I'm to put it in that terms. How did you kind of first of all tackle these problems at that point of time, when the technology was also not that advanced, that KYCs and all of that could not be done on board, and
Right.
having such a large ecosystem that you wanted to work with? So how did you decide what is your starting point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the starting point was actually very simple: to figure out what was that need the customer had, and how do we
Hmm.
assess the cash flow. And you're absolutely correct. Verifiability of data, or accessibility of data has come a long way in a decade. But initially, when I started, there was only one way to do it: is to go and collect it physically, manually, one
Right.
point at a time, and we've been doing that for 11 years. And in
Hmm.
fact, I think the beauty of our business and our business model is that we have been servicing the same customer for more than a decade, and we have
Wow.
collected and amassed this information about them over time. And as time has
Hmm.
moved, India Stack has come in, and we have we have so much integration now. We talk about account aggregation, we talk about so many new ideas off of India Stack. Even it has served us really well to have this data that is still not really publicly that easily available. So the process was very simple. In the early days, we would
Hmm.
have field officers that would go out, that would meet customers that were very urban, tier 1, tier 2. So you had a large catchment of, let's say, a manufacturing site or an area that had lots of small manufacturing units, and you'd be able to
Hmm.
find and source customers. You'd had a credit officer that would go and collect and assess the cash flow of the business,
Right.
and all of this was entered and managed, and we had risk-based weighted average kind of models, basic models, I would say more like, more like simpler models to assess the customers, both capacity to pay, eligibility, and so on. And then we would go ahead and disperse the loan. What has changed so much in this decade with the availability of integration and technology, and the fact that we have collected so much data, is we've moved away. We moved away from having to do physical KYC and OSV stamps and all of that, right? That is a thing of the past, thank God, right? It didn't really help. What's really needed. Aadhaar has been such a big, it's just such a big digital infra piece for all of us in that sense. And on the back end of it, because we've been working with the same customer segment, this micro enterprise that is typically does, about a crore and a half of annual turnover. So we are able to build data science models and have built data science models, risk models to underwrite this customer segment. And today, all of our decisioning is fully automated. So when I look at the loan process, we used to be 7-10 days to disperse a loan, which was still fast for back
at that point of time, definitely.
At that point in time, it was still fast, right? But now we're able to do it in 24 hours. And that's such a value, such big, large, impactful value to a customer who has an order in hand, needs working capital, and has money in his bank in 24 hours, so he can go on and, get on with doing the business rather than chasing financial units.
Definitely. So speaking of the new platforms that you just mentioned, right? Account aggregation, India Stack. Account aggregation is a bit recent. India Stack is now slightly older. Which platforms would you say has completely changed the way that you do business in the last 5 years? Like most impactful platform, right? From let's say account aggregators or India Stack, OKN, which is like relatively very new, and ONDC, which is not completely live yet. But so let's kind of divide this into two pieces. First is which impacted your business in the last 5 years, and let's say in the coming 5 years, what do you foresee? Which upcoming platform will kind of impact your business the most?
Yeah. I think the India Stack has definitely had a massive impact, and it's not just when we think of it, we think only KYC verification, but the whole stack across digi signing, eNAC. Right? Those are all integrated pieces, right? And that whole universe, and I know, that whole universe has really made a big difference, because at the end of the day, what are you trying to do? You're trying to, accurately assess the identity, try to accurately assess the business potential or credentials or, cash flows, and then make sure that you are legally protected by having all the documents signed, verified, and eNACH and collections becomes an easy thing. So to me, the India piece has been a game changer for all of us in this universe. And I would say going forward in the next 5 years, fundamentally, account aggregator for this segment will be very, very important. I'll tell you why. GST is there, right? And we do GST, but only about 30 or 40% of our customers are GST enabled, because they fall under that smaller bracket where they don't need to have it, right? So assessment of income, it becomes difficult if you're not GST registered. But banking, if we can get access to banking, because they all are using banking, all of the micro enterprises, then that information can really speed up our underwriting and be much more clean and verifiable, and for us to be able to give the right product, the right loan amount at the right tenure to a customer who needs that capital, right? And for our ability to assess becomes so much better.
Agreed. I think definitely not even just for this segment, but across the financial ecosystem, account aggregator is something that's going to completely change the game, right? The ability to, as something as simple as someone like me wanting to know where all my money is and where I've invested and where exactly it is. I have to kind of open 6 different apps and kind of pick an Excel sheet, export the data, put a total to it, see the profits, see the losses, all of that. You just get that in one single app. That's something that probably 3 years back we couldn't even imagine that this is possible, right? And because of that data interoperability and the blind postman mechanism, it's now kind of possible. So that's something really even I look forward to. And as well as I think I'm also super excited about ONDC as well, specifically in the retail segment. But yeah, that's a topic for a completely different this thing. Kind of switching gears a bit, and bringing this back to the MSME space. Uh, what would you, how would you describe your target the target market? When you look at entrepreneurs, what kind of segments or what kind of businesses are they in, and what kind of demographic persona are the business owners themselves?
Yes. So the micro enterprises, the MSMEs that we serve are, the data on this 60 million MSMEs in the country. Most of them are micro enterprises. We are operating in 6 states. And these 6 states, which is Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Gujarat, these six states are pretty much the top 6 states of MSMEs. 70% of output, MSME output, comes from these 6 states. So we are where we need to be, where the MSMEs are. Now, our portfolio, we have disbursed over 3,500 crores in the last decade or so. And our portfolio, our customer, so 3,500 crores, about 75,000, 80,000 odd loans is what we have disbursed. It is almost equally divided between manufacturing and trading businesses. And we have very little services portfolio that's growing. And most of our customers tend to be tier 1, tier 2, based in tier 1, tier 2 cities. And now slowly going into tier 2.5. We haven't quite hit the rural markets yet, but there is continued potential for MSMEs everywhere for us to be able to service them. Especially, we have a My Kinara app that is, the customers are seeking us. They find us in different ways, and that's one way for us to also help servicing them. Even if they are in slightly further geographies than where we are immediately operating.
Awesome. So I think we've covered most of the states that have MSMEs and tier 1, tier 2, if I got you right? So when you look at this, the business owners and kind of take borrow from you, what would you what percentage of that, if you were to kind of to bifurcate it from a gender perspective, what percentage of that would that be women? And do you see any difference in the way they repay versus the male borrowers are repaying?
Yeah. I mean, look, women in our portfolio, 10% of our borrowers are women. And we actually run a Hardikas program, which we give an upfront discount to women entrepreneurs. We want to promote entrepreneurship. So here's the next challenge, if you will, for us to tackle, right? When I look at our customers and I look at their employees, our customers typically hire or employ 5 to 10 people, depending on the sector, segment, and size that they are. Now, roughly, there are about 150 to 200,000 employees that are employed today in the customers that we serve. About 45% of them are women.
Right.
But roll forward 10 years, only 10% of those women are going off to become their own small business owners. So somewhere our system is broken, right? Why is it that while they're learning on the job, they can be in a manufacturing site, etc. Most of our customers are first generation entrepreneurs. Most of our customers typically get their break by buying the second-hand machine of the guy or the business they're working in and starting a shed next to, and that their employer now becomes their first buyer, and then they go from there if they're a manufacturing business.
Right.
But why is that the women are not able to break that and move to the next level? So one of the things we wanted to do, the first thing we wanted to do, which is what we've done in the last 3 years, is we have said we will promote women entrepreneurship. If you're a woman business, no questions asked, we'll give you a discount up front. And that allows you to basically get a cheaper cost of capital than your male counterpart, right? So it gives you a little bit of cost. We then bolt that on with business networking services. With Grow with Kinara is one of our flagship education programs for customers and partners. And so we really focus on that with the women entrepreneurs to help them think about their business at the next level. How can they plan? How can they utilize tools, something as simple as Google My Business or WhatsApp business accounts to help promote their business and help them in their journeys. So it's not just to give a discount, it's also build this little ecosystem around them to help. Our next challenge that we would love to take on over the next couple of years is how do we get more women into business? because we
That's a
need
major one.
we need to fight that fight, I think, as an
Yeah,
ecosystem. So we need to get there and give them a path that might not be easily accessible, available, or even visible to them at this point, to help them get into that business that they would like to and build that ecosystem around. But that's I'm sorry, that's a long-winded answer to your question, but about 10% of our portfolio is women businesses today.
I think it's great, and I'm really glad to really see you really passionate about it, as well as glad to actually see an ecosystem level initiative. Because as you rightly said, just an upfront discount or something will make an impact, but there has to be a bit of an ecosystem creation, some networking, some hand-holding, mentorship is always required for this specific segment. And I think it's really glad to see people kind of getting into it and kind of doing that for the customers. So great. Kind of switching gear here back again. When you spoke about the demographics that you're addressing, that's a tier one, tier two. So what is stopping lenders as of now from going into the tier three, tier four, and the tier three, four, five kind of segment? What are the obstacles that you kind of face there? I mean, as a, let's say, representative of the lender or this thing.
Yeah, I think tier three, is going to be a natural progression. We're almost there on that. I think it's just a question of how does one address the market. We went in very urban, peri-urban, semi-urban, through tier two and then down, and so we will get there. I think the challenge, I would say, in the more rural markets is that the catchment of businesses are smaller. I mean, number of businesses are much smaller. So to service them while they are distanced from one village to the other, and there might be only a handful of them, and they might need different things at different times, is the challenge. This is where I do believe that digitization is going to come up. Is really going to help over
Definitely.
time. If once look, we're back to the same question, right? Can I identify you? Can I underwrite you? Do I have data that I can verify that I'm confident is correct, and therefore I'm confident that the risk I'm taking on you is a risk I can take? And do I have a good mechanism for collections without having to have somebody show up every Monday morning, right? If I can solve for these three things, which will come through as more of this digital infrastructure gets built out and more people get onto the frameworks of that, then it will become easier to even address the more rural markets.
No, definitely. I agree with you. And in this situation, right, as you rightly said, when you kind of get into areas where these businesses are scattered and it becomes difficult to reach them, the cost of acquiring these customers as well as cost of maintaining the relationships becomes higher and higher, right? If you have the FOS network over there, so digitization is definitely the way. And considering the fact that smartphone penetration as well as internet is kind of now getting to those areas, it will probably become easier to address that market in the next couple of years or so.
Yeah, so I think we have to build the trust factor back, right? So while smartphones and data is almost free and everywhere, the last few years, we have definitely broken the new to digital consumer, if I can call them that, the new to digital customers' trust with a lot of apps that have not been with the right intent and clarity and stuff like that. So it'll take us a little bit of time to get to do that. But I definitely feel that is the wave that we have to traverse to make this work equally across the country.
Definitely, couldn't have agreed more. Kind of switching gear here back. When you started off, with Kinara Capital, I've heard a lot of founders talk about their first customer experience being probably something that they can never forget, and there is always a very interesting anecdote there. So, what's your story on that?
Yeah, there are so many firsts in that sense, and one of the ones that I remember, so vividly, is we were in Hosur. And we were talking to one potential customer, and there was an older gentleman just waiting outside. And, we weren't sure what was going on. And then finally, we realized he was waiting to talk to us because he had heard that we are a lending company, an RBI registered, lending company that was talking to a potential customer. And he had 25 years of experience. He had he had this small manufacturing shed. He was reverse engineering
Mm-hmm.
from some CAD design the parts without ever
Mm-hmm.
having gone to not even clearing 10th standard, right? That's how smart he was.
Wow.
He could do that. And his biggest challenge was he decided, like all parents, that he wanted to start this business and bring his son into the business. So now we have built this business with him and his son. That was their first entrepreneurial venture. And they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to buy a CNC machine, which was secondhand, a demo machine, great quality. He knew that's the machine he wanted. He needed 6 lakhs, and he just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find anybody who would give him that capital. And I kid you not,
Oh,
funded him that capital. We have given him multiple loans. His son has, doubled the business, married. He's the happiest man. His family man. We have had him and customer events where he will stand up and there are tears welling up in his eyes about how that one thing changed not only his risk, but the trajectory of the life of his son and now his grandchildren, hopefully beyond that. And that is just powerful. You think you're doing all of this to give a loan. Actually, you're doing all of this to really truly impact lives in some ways, and ways sometimes you don't even understand. And it is just phenomenal to have those stories. And we have so many of them. I could be here all day talking about it, but
would
it's
love,
really
definitely love to
powerful.
hear more. But this story just gave me goosebumps. I mean, I'm not even kidding. I literally have goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
And it's really heartwarming to hear actually that single action of someone can affect an entire generation and multiple generations, right? You probably change the course of that family's
Yeah.
history. I mean, that's one single loan. No, that's great. I mean, more. I mean, so this is specifically something that kind of is really close to my heart, financial inclusion, and I've always been kind of finding my ways to get more involved in the ecosystem, be it ground level surveys and all of that. So I've been to a few villages, done these kind of surveys either with lenders or either with organizations like Teach India and those kind of people, and trying to understand more of the economy. Just interacting with these people also gives you a different perspective on life and makes you a bit more grateful. Yeah.
And a bit more courageous, because the risk and the courage they have and they take every day is phenomenal. Right?
Definitely. Agreed. So yeah, I think this was a really good conversation. I think we almost are at the brink of our time. I didn't even realize we were here for almost 45 minutes now. It's been really fun talking to you. Before we kind of close for the day, I would probably ask you 5 questions. It's a rapid fire round.
Sure.
Don't think too much. Just whatever comes to first thing that comes to your mind, you just kind of speak that out. All right. So, first question is, who is your role model?
Warren Buffett. I think that he has a great balance of business and philanthropy that he practices.
Okay. Which is your favorite book?
Well, the one I recently read again is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. And there are a lot of nice nuggets of relationships, of people, of interactions that I feel are applicable everywhere.
Trevor Noah, the comedian?
The comedian, yeah.
Oh, wow. I really love his acts, but I did not know he has written a book.
Yeah, he wrote a book a long time ago. It's good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I'll definitely check it out. This is my favorite question, right? What time do you wake up?
4:30, 4:45 a.m.
Wow. Okay, that's normally the time I go to sleep on Friday nights, but how do you, I always ask this question to anyone who says anything earlier than 7. Like, how do you kind of manage to get up that early and have energy throughout the day? Like, I would be sleepy by 6 o'clock.
I just think they're different, body rhythms, right? Mine's more of the early morning, early to bed kind of body rhythm, and that works for me. And I look after a variety of street dogs in our neighborhood, and so that's my morning with them.
Wow.
I have a couple that we foster and care for, so we walk and we feed, and it's my time to just to start my day that way.
Awesome. That's really interesting. Okay, one final question. How do you disconnect from your work life, or do you even disconnect at all? Right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, I do. Not enough, maybe, but definitely I do. And the way I do it is I love to cook. So I do love to do a lot of artsy things. I love to paint. I love to cook. I do
Oh,
pottery.
wow.
It's all the left brain, right brain separation that needs to happen, and then that becomes such a creative endeavor that it takes away from all the logical decisioning that needs to be
Hmm.
done, and it's a great way to unwind.
The more I hear about this, I think I've kind of heard about this somewhere else as well, right? To disengage your the work, the left brain, you kind of have to indulge in something creative and do something that takes you away from it. And I've been trying it recently, and actually, I've seen the impact. It makes a difference. I
Yeah,
just come home, pick up my guitar, and it's like, yeah, it kind of disconnects you from the day, gives
yeah,
you a
and
decent
you're
break.
so engrossed in that creative passion, right, that you
Yeah,
forget all the other things around you.
definitely. One last question, I promise. What do you or where do you go? What do you do or where do you go to kind of completely chill out? Like maybe a vacation place or just some corner of the house.
Ah, well, I used to always say, people would ask, because I traveled so much for work, right?
Hmm.
And I would say home is wherever I can have a nice glass of wine with my husband. And so wherever in the world we are, so far as we're having a nice glass of wine together, that's where it is, a perfect place to be.
Awesome, perfect. That's just the perfect way to end things. I think it is great having you here, Hardika.
Thank you
Pleasure,
so much, Shreyas. It
and
was a
thank you so much
pleasure.
for thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. All right.
Indeed.